Barry, next time you need a burn yard person to come through, or next time you're doing a race. Yeah. You never know. As long as I don't get some friction on it.
Don't do any sparks or anything.
Anything to avoid a gasoline shower.
That plug is a clutch, dude.
Yeah. Gas tanks are like always the hardest to
Yeah.
drain. Welcome back to another episode of No Bolts Left Behind. I'm working on my 68 Mustang and I'm right in the middle of converting it to fuel injection. In the last episode, I installed a Holley Sniper EFI carburetor replacement thing and I got it all wired up. And of course, like a modern computer controlled fancy fuel injection unit like that is gonna need a higher pressure fuel system with an electronic pump and a second fuel line. And I have my own way of doing this. I've done it before. It's definitely like a very budget-friendly way of doing it, and I'm really hoping it's gonna work out for the Mustang. I've got all the parts I need, so the first thing I wanna get working on today is installing that second fuel line. All right, so I got myself a replacement pre-bent fuel line, and I'm planning on running it right alongside the factory hard line. One thing though that I'm just noticing now is that from the factory, this fuel line does not actually go all the way up to the engine bay right here, at least as a hard line. It seems like actually this is a two-piece fuel line, and there is a section of rubber line right here. I'm not sure why they chose to do that. This rubber line is actually really, really old, clearly, so it's a little bit sketchy. But the problem is that this clamp-on style here is not good enough for fuel injection. Basically, I'm gonna have to run both fuel lines up to here, and I guess I'll have to finish off the last end of it, which is like a couple of feet, in like a rubber or like a steel braided AN line. I guess the next step is to unbend this guy, and then I'll run it right next to the old fuel line, and it should make a second line right up to the gas tank. Actually, you know, on second thought, before I install this line, I think it's a good time now to go ahead and cut these barbed sort of ends off this guy, because the type of fittings I'm going to use for the fuel injection, or for the AN lines, I guess, are going to be compression fittings, so I need like a flat, clean tube to bolt those guys on. Which way the sparks are going to go. All right, so I got this fuel line in here in place and routed pretty much right next to the stock fuel line, and it fits pretty good, more or less. And I'm gonna have to go grab a bunch of clamps. I'm actually gonna clamp this up using like rubber isolated clamps and all of that, but I don't have any for now. So I think what I'm gonna do is just move on to mounting this fuel pump. I got this inline Bosch fuel pump, which is a common one to use for a lot of cars. I know like V8 Fords from the 90s use them. I know some Porsches use them as well. And I know that running an inline fuel pump outside of the tank isn't the ideal way to do it for fuel injection. These fuel pumps can overheat, they can be loud. But I've actually had personal experience with this guy. I ran this one on a past Suzuki Samurai swap actually, and it actually ran pretty good, and it was actually pretty quiet. So I went ahead with this same one. One thing you have to do with an inline fuel pump is run it basically as low as possible, but it has to be lower than the gas tank or at the bottom of the gas tank, because inline fuel pumps are gravity fed. So I'm gonna have to make some sort of bracket to hang down this guy below the level of the tank. I think somewhere around here. So let me see if I can get a, it's so hard. You're laughing at me.
You're laughing.
I'm almost done. So let me get some sort of like metal bracket fabricated up here. I think I'm gonna hang it from the floor, which also is not ideal for sound reasons, but I think if I dampen this thing and use rubber isolators on the floor, I think it'll be okay. All right, so I dug through my pile of scrap metal and I found two of these brackets. I think came off of like an old fence, but they're still pretty, you know, there's a little bit of surface rust, but I'm gonna go ahead and reuse these guys. I can't really do this one-handed, but I'm gonna put two brackets here and here. I think I'm gonna bend it up. I think I'm gonna bend it from about here, and the fuel pump is gonna be mounted somewhere around here, and I'll end up probably boxing in this whole thing. Hopefully that'll be strong enough, and I'll have to build in some foam in here to keep it from vibrating. Otherwise this thing will be loud and annoying. Somewhere. So it does seem like it's pretty far towards. That seems about right. Probably even a little less.
Just eyeball it.
Yeah, that you know, that's what I'm doing.
There you go.
The contour of the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not much more.
I mean, we'll come back and adjust it with
All right, I got this little house for the fuel pump made up. The two brackets should fit in this guy perfectly, slide right in, and this will make it a little bit more rigid, but most importantly, it'll protect the fuel pump. I think I kind of got carried away a little bit, but I feel like it's better safe than sorry when you're dealing with these fuel fittings and the wires. So the important thing is to really get some like foam or something, or like rubber isolation for this guy. And I think I'll put some rubber in between where the mounts mount to the floor and where this guy is going to mount to the floor too. So these two mounts will be the main brackets of this whole contraption. And I guess this thing will just, that thing should slide. Perfect. Nice. I just need to bend this guy a little bit and finish off sliding that guy up there. Fuel pump will mount right in there. It'll be a nice little protective home for this guy. My hope is it shouldn't be really visible from down here. You know, maybe just a little bit of like a lip showing down, but nothing weird or out of the ordinary. Cool. Unfortunately, my welder died actually during the tacking of this thing, so I kind of got some like really terrible tacks because the gas wasn't flowing, but I just went ahead and bolted this guy. I've got, 8 bolts, however many, couple on the bottom. That should be just fine. And I suppose that means I could take this apart later. I don't know why I ever would need to, but the welding would have probably been overkill. So now I have my, my rubber sort of, I think they're called P-clamps in here and ready for the fuel pump, which I have this nice rubberized sweater on. Before I put that guy in there, I do want to do one thing, and that's, or I guess I have to do one thing, and that's put the AN fitting on this side. So I'll put this on there really quick and I'll get this thing installed. Got this fuel pump mount finished. It looks a little crazy, but I think it's gonna work. Instead of painting it, I actually hit it with some rubberized undercoating, like truck bed liner type of stuff. I'm hoping that that'll give a little bit of cushion for the sound. I also put a huge sheet of this kind of like, it's like Dynamat, but it's the cheaper one, the fake Dynamat. I put a big sheet of that on there just to hopefully contain some of the sound and the vibration, because fuel pumps, especially external fuel pumps, are known to be very noisy. And then of course I have the rubber isolating with that foam pad as well. And I was gonna do like some rubber washers here too, and like maybe even mount this with rubber, but I don't want to make this thing too floppy, so I'm gonna go with this for now, and I'll see if it's too loud later on. But as you can see, this thing is mounted very securely, but it still does move in there, which means that it is kind of floating in there and hopefully won't make too much noise. All right, there we go. I got a straight cut tube on both sides. Cut that one down there. I did not explode, so that's good. And this should be ready for that sort of like compression AN fitting type thing. So let me grab one of those and we'll see if we can get that guy on here. All right, I got both ends of both fuel lines fitted with these AN adapters. So I measured all of the fuel hose I'm gonna use. Up until now, I've always just bought pre-made fuel hoses, like AN fuel hoses. But for this project, I kind of need some unique hoses, so I don't really think it's gonna be an option to order some pre-made ones. And it'll be a lot cheaper to make my own. So I'll go ahead and give it a try. So I'm gonna connect two, of course, steel braided AN hoses through this guy here, which of course I'm gonna have to drill another hole. And these will run in the factory location of the hardline, which is tucked up against the fender well, through this hole, and I guess there already is a second hole, or I'll drill another hole. Actually, let me go check if that's if there is a grommet there. I don't see one. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, this is a little bit close to the steering box, so I'll probably drill a second hole in here, you know, right next to it or something. I'll need to make actually a handful of them in the back here too. We're gonna need a fuel line here to kind of angle down and then connect to the fuel pump right here. The fuel pump's actually gonna have to loop around and connect into the fuel sending unit. And then I think the easiest one will be this return line, which goes straight over here, connects to the fitting right here. I kind of lucked out with this car, and there is actually a fuel drain, which luckily it is gonna be very close to where the fuel return line is gonna be. And my thought is just to put a fitting in here, just like that, to convert that to an AN6 line. I'll run a 90 degree off of this guy, and the fuel will return right here in the bottom of the tank. All right, that's one fuel line done. I know I'm supposed to use like aluminum wrenches and a little thing for my vise, but I don't have them. I have never bothered to buy them, so I do have a little bit of scratches here on the fitting, but I don't really care. It doesn't really bother me. It's all going to be hidden, and this is very much not a show car, so that was a good first hose, a good test. I got the clocking right, which is the angle of this 90 degree here. And I look to be in pretty good shape. This guy will mount right there. And so the next two lines I'm gonna have to do are gonna be a little bit tricky. The first thing I'll have to do is drill a second hole so that I can get two lines going from, this is the input, so the return line. It's gonna have to come out here, down around, I guess follow the path of this guy more or less, and go through the inner fender here somewhere. I guess right here is where the original one went, so I'll probably drill a hole right there, right next to it, and we'll come out through the fender well, down here, and through, I guess, kind of like a torque box thing. And, oh, there's my flashlight. And it'll meet up with this. Let's see, there should be a hard line. There it is, right there. All right, I got these fuel lines finished up, and they're actually looking pretty good up here. Of course, I'll have a big circular air cleaner on top of that, so pretty much all of this will be hidden. There'll just be two black lines kind of sneaking around the back corner over there. And one other thing I did was add some pretty intense abrasion-resistant wire sleeve. This stuff is pretty tough, and so I'm pretty confident that this will be good for many, many, many miles. Just need to finish clamping down the rest of these hard lines here. Then I think we can move on to the back and get the fuel lines hooked up there, and we might have a finished working fuel system. there we go. Actually, this came out pretty good. I got this thing like really solidly mounted. I was kind of worried that it would be a little bit floppy, but you know, I got bolts across here. I'll have to trim this off. Probably never. And I've got bolts in there as well, and those are all bolted in through the trunk floor. Of course, I have to still hit this with bed liners so it's not reflecting, but I didn't want to get my hands too dirty when I was installing this guy, so I'll do that here in a minute. All right, got that last fuel line in right there. And I got the wires hooked up. So I just went ahead and hooked up a ground wire and the power wire that's coming from the trunk area, of course. And I did go ahead and test the fuel pump. It's pretty easy just to jumper the power wire to this this output wire for the relay, and it worked. No leaks. I did forget to tighten down 2 of them here, so actually I had a pretty good leak just from these loose AN fittings right there, but once I tightened those guys down, we were all set. So that's actually pretty incredible. Every single fitting that we made with all of those AN lines, all were okay. The return line was okay. So I guess the last thing we got to do now is weld on that O2 sensor into the exhaust. I'll probably have to drop the exhaust down to do that. I'll probably wait for the fuel to dry. Once that's in, I think that should be all that I need to try and fire this thing up for the first time. Awesome. All right, well, that's it for this episode. I was really hoping to get this thing started, but those fuel lines ended up taking me way longer than I thought they would. The next episode, though, we'll get this thing started, or at least I'll attempt to get it started. As long as I hooked everything up right, it should start, and we'll take it for its first drive around the block on the fuel-injected inline-6 motor. All right, see you next week.